What's up, Mind Waves?
Not too much, dude. Just chilling, killing some zombies. Actually, what about you?
Nice. Just chatting.
Hell yeah.
Um, so Sam Cedar is the debate getter together.
Yeah, he seems to do that a lot.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to have Sam Cedar here helping streamers get together to debate.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. Um, yeah, what'd you have on your mind?
Well, I mean, I don't particularly have any topic. I think the one of the big pieces in the news right now is Iran, and what's going on there. I don't necessarily
What's
want to
going on
like.
there right
I
now?
don't
I actually
necessarily.
I haven't followed the news lately.
Um. Well, basically, there's just a lot of tension. Trump has sent um, four B-52 bombers plus an aircraft strike group, and they're saying that there's a lot of. First of all, Iran like attacked two Saudi oil tankers and the Norwegian oil tanker in the Persian Gulf, and um, like the U.S. government is saying that there's more indications that Iran might attack U.S. interests and a lot. And then of course then you have the basically the liberal media and all the Democrats and the lefts like just screaming bloody murder about John Bolton, and it's like John Bolton's not even the one making decisions.
Huh. Yeah, I actually haven't followed that up at all. I probably should though. I haven't followed the news cycle for the last like 3 or 4 days, I think.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Gallup says 4 in 10 Americans embrace socialism.
Hell yeah. What's your views on socialism?
I'm opposed to it.
You don't like the democratic ownership of the means of production?
Absolutely not.
Why not? You think the like only like a capitalist should own the capital?
No, I mean I think socialism the main I mean the easiest way to boil down like why socialism fails is because it fails to take into account human nature. And so, I mean, you look at even like the U.S., the way the U.S. was first founded, like the pilgrims that came over on the Mayflower, they actually basically tried socialism right at the beginning, where like they started a new colony. Everybody said, "Hey, let's put all of our food together. Let's put all of our stuff together. We'll all, and then we'll all take from it." And it was basically a socialist idea. In the first couple of years, it just worked out horribly, and then the colonists basically decided to go more towards a private ownership model where people could keep what they made and stuff, and the colony actually did much better. So I think just, and it's just because human nature is like people aren't going to want to work if they're having to pay into some general pot that um, like then people who aren't working as hard get the draw from. It's not fair at just like a fundamental level. It's just not fair.
Well, I don't think that's really like an inherent flaw of socialism at all. It's totally conceivable that you could have like a I mean, you even see sort of like even worker co-ops here in the United States have a sort of like socialist structure where it's like a very democratic like workplace. People that are assigned to boards based on like the workers that like vote them in and stuff like that. They all get like a shared dividend and like a or like a shared basically they all have like some like investment in the company, right? And like the share of the growth in the company, and it seems to work out really well for co-ops in the United States. Yeah, I think in like a fully socialistic system, I don't see why it wouldn't work there.
Well, like like how big are these co-ops and where are they in the U.S.?
Well, usually, typically in the U.S., the co-ops that start here are typically pretty small in scale. But I don't think that's really like I don't think that like if you even if you scale it up, like I don't think it becomes a problem, right? Because you scale up your resources, you scale up the amount of labor that you have, right? Like
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about these co-ops, but I mean, I think that you can have like it sounds like if I mean to go full on, it would have to be essentially like a commune where everybody was living there and it was sort of like this utopia. But like if it's just a co-op where it's like a business that I know, like co-ops, like at least where I'm from, like the a lot of common co-ops are like farmer co-ops where like a lot of farmers will get together and then they'll like pool money and it'll be a business that then like buys goods that the farmers need to buy, and then all these farmers own it, but this is like a business, it's like a store where the farmers go and buy stuff, and then the profits from that store just go back to the farmers, and that's like a farmer co-op. But that is like basically capitalism working. It's just the farmers coming together to form a business essentially.
Yeah, and to be like completely honest, I don't really like I mean, I don't mind the idea of socialism inherently, but I don't really advocate for like a full-on socialist system. At least not right now. Like I definitely think that some sectors of the market need to be off limits as far as like the leaving it up to the free market. I think there's some industries that need to be socialized, like healthcare and like housing, for instance. But like other markets, I'm totally okay with like leaving that up to the free market, right? Like I don't want right now I don't really see the utility in like having a centrally planned economy where we have like a state like we have like the state basically like producing like our Yeezys and our fucking you know like all these other sorts of goods that are like non-necessities, you know, like luxury goods, I guess you could say.
Totally. Okay, so what I'm hearing is basically you're not a full-on communist, you're not a full-on socialist, so that's good, we can agree on that.
Well, I really do like the sort of like the Scandinavian model, right? Like we'll just say like, well, all right, so healthcare is off the table, right? Let's get these insurance companies out of the fucking market. Let's stop letting them profit off of the backs of like people trying to get healthcare, and let's all just pay into a system where we all cover each other's insurance, blah 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 blah, blah, right? We can do that, and then yeah, we can do that with whatever sectors, because I definitely think that like leaving everything up to the free market isn't always good for the consumer, because you get these market failures, right? And you kind of have to make up for market failures.
Well, I mean, first of all, I agree with you that like the Scandinavian model is not even full on socialist. Like the Scandinavian model
Hmm.
is capitalist, private ownership, corporations. They've got a lot of oil that is paying for that stuff, and they pay high taxes, and then they have a healthcare system that is paid for by other people, and so um, I mean, I don't necessarily think there's a there's obviously a failure in the U.S. healthcare system. Obviously, it's failed. It's like not working, but it's not a market failure because it's not a free market, and it really hasn't been a free market since Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security were implemented. And so that's when you started to see the government get involved in the healthcare. That's when you started to see the costs just like start skyrocketing. It's the same thing with college tuition. And lots of other goods. Anytime you see the government start to subsidize something like college tuition or create artificial demand in the market, like with healthcare, you're going to see just basic economics tells you you're going to see prices just start skyrocketing and just going way up. And so,
Well,
really,
a big
that's
problem.
the fundamental problem we have.
Well, a big problem with colleges, for instance, the reason that like a lot of students are going into debt is because we're allowing private interests to be involved in like the access of college, right? Where we have these huge companies like basically giving out predatory loans to students that usually don't know better. You could say like, oh well, they should know better, but let's be real, most of them don't. And like companies like these like really do prey off of like you know like giving these students debt that they're gonna have to like pay off for like years and years after they graduate college, right? Um, so like that's why I personally think that like we need more regulation in that sort of field to make sure that like this sort of like predatory loans like don't really like basically I want to make sure that we're not taking advantage of people that are just trying to get an education, right? I don't think that anybody needs to be making a profit off the backs of these people, right?
Well, hold on.
Obviously
Isn't it
you
is
had. Mhm.
isn't the federal government doing all student loans? I thought all student loans now are from the federal government.
Are all student? I don't believe so. No. I mean, I
The
could be
vast,
wrong, but
the
I don't believe
vast,
so.
the vast majority, at least, of
Because
student loans are
well,
from the
the
federal
thing is that
government.
like a lot of this debt doesn't it get handed over to like private interests anyways?
No, only for the servicing of it. And so the underlying debt is issued by the federal government, and then they hire servicing companies like Fed Loan Servicing, um, some other private servicing companies, Navient. These are companies that just service the debt, just collect payments and do accounting for it. But the
Hmm.
actual underlying loans
Well,
are
yeah,
issued by the
there's
federal
actually a lot of
government.
corruption that goes on in those services as well. I think like a year ago, or I think it was like 1 or 2 years ago, there was a company that got caught, basically withholding information to the people that they were giving loans to make sure that they didn't pay their loans, so that they actually ended up owing more over time. So you have like companies doing like these sorts of practices where they're like preying on students' ignorance and like not letting them know what their like loans actually entail, um, just so that they could acquire more profit off of these people.
Well, I mean, just to sort of respond directly to what you're saying and not get off into the weeds, um, it is ultimately people's responsibility to take out loans or be smart about what loans they're taking out. The issue is though is the federal government initially got involved and started subsidizing these private student loans and then guaranteeing them. And what the federal guarantee is to a private bank is to say, hey, you give out this student loan, us as the federal government will guarantee that you get repaid even if the person dies or if the person doesn't repay the loan. Like we as the taxpayer or as a representative of the taxpayer, we will make sure you get paid. So that they were initially guaranteeing it. You started to see tuition start to go up then, and then I think in like 2000 something, the federal government. I'll look it up. The federal government literally took over all student loans. So now virtually all student loans are given out by the federal government, and that is a problem. I think that is a bad thing.
Hmm. Well, that's why I think that like we should just be publicly funding this anyways. Like I think tuition should totally just be covered. Like I don't think there's any reason that we should be like having anybody like giving out these sorts of loans to students. I don't think it really should be necessary. Like people should just have access to this sort of education. Like
The problem is
it
that
shouldn't
we don't have
be.
money. We can't pay for it. I mean, we're broke. We've got it.
Oh, that's absolutely not true. Like we're not broke at all. Like we still like have like the strongest economy in the world. Like let's not joke
we
around
do
here.
we do
Like
have the strongest economy, but we're running $1 trillion deficit and we're $22 trillion in debt.
well, yeah, but like the deficit really isn't that big of a deal right now. Like I think we still owe, or we own most of our debt, right? I think China is like the second biggest owner of our debt or whatever, but like not even close. But and like there is a healthy amount of debt to have. We might be over that, sure, and it might become a problem later on, but right now not really. And we already see fucking like huge hikes in fucking federal allocation of taxpayer money when it comes to like military spending. So like it seems totally justifiable when it comes to like military interests, but when it comes to like educating the people, it's like, oh well, we don't have the fucking money for it, and I really don't get that.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. You think that the taxpayer should be paying for somebody to go get a degree in like sociology or anthropology or something?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it benefits society as a whole to have a more educated society. Not only that, but we have a lot of like these highly like there's a lot of positions that need more people that are like qualified, right? Like these more demanding jobs in the sort of modern economy that we have, where we need more educated workers. We either need to educate the people we have here, or we need to import people from other nations that are adequate. So like we do have like there's like fuck I was looking
Thank you,
into this the
Nova
other
and E.
day
Thanks for the
about
follow. Appreciate it.
like the how the sort of like labor market is changing a lot right now, and how there was like 25 or 35% of like job growth by, fuck, what was it, I think it was 25 or 35% of job growth by 2020 is going to be like we're not going to have enough people to like fill those positions because they're like they require like a higher education than, I don't know. Yeah, basically like it's a huge problem because we need like more educated people for like these jobs that we're going to
Well,
have.
no, we need people with actual science degrees and engineering degrees. We don't need a bunch of like sociologists and political scientists and anthropologists and everything like that. And I just think it's like to have the
Well,
taxpayer foot
it
the
sounds
bill
like
for
you're
somebody to go.
discrediting those fields. Like I think those fields are definitely useful as well.
Yeah,
Like
but
I don't know.
and they are, but if there's jobs for them, that's great. But the fact of the matter is we're pumping out, you know, just thousands and thousands of liberal arts majors, and meanwhile we need engineers, and we're not making any but engineers because everybody's going to get these dumb liberal arts degrees, and it's just the market doesn't need this many of them. And
I don't think
anyway,
that's true at all.
it's not the federal government's job to choose to just fund people's education. It's like if people want to get an education beyond a basic high school education provided by the states, there's nothing in the Constitution that authorizes the federal government to even do that. And it
Mhm.
becomes a complete inefficient waste of time because then you've got this massive bureaucracy to do it. And it's unfair. I think it's fundamentally unfair to take money from some person that's working who chose not to go to college, who immediately started working and is now out there breaking his back doing blue collar work, and you're going to force him to pay for some punk kid to go to college for free? That's not fair.
You know, I don't know. I don't see it as like a fair thing. Like I don't see it as like taking away from somebody else and giving it to another, because like we're all paying into a pool so that everybody in society can benefit from it, right? It's not like we're only taking from a certain group of people and giving it to another, right? Like you're making it seem like some Robin Hood justice when it's really not.
Well, it is though, because the people that chose not to go to college are going to be paying for the people that chose to go to college, and that's not fair. If somebody wants to go to
Well,
college, why can't they pay
the
for it
more
themselves?
opportunity
And
that people have to get a higher education, the more they take advantage of it, right? If we make it available to more people are going to take advantage of going to college.
that's
And
absolutely
that's
right, but it's going to be people that don't actually give a shit about it. Like I studied in
why do you
Europe.
say that? What makes you
I've
even think that?
because I've studied in Europe, and I studied in Europe in college for a semester, and I met numerous people at that university who literally came up to me and said, "Yeah, I'm here at the university. I'm going to college, but I don't give a fuck about college. I hate education. This is stupid. Like I'm only here because the government pays me to come here. The government makes this free." And again, that's human nature. Human nature will abuse programs and will take advantage of things if it's available. And so having the federal government come in and pay for anybody to go to college, you're going to just see massive abuse, and you're going to see massive amounts of waste and fraud and abuse where kids are going to be going to college and just literally saying, fuck it, I don't give a shit about education. I don't give a shit about anything. I'm just here because somebody else is paying for it. Somebody else is paying for me to be here. Fuck them. I'll take that money. I'll party it
Well,
up in
I
college.
think there's always going to be a portion of people that are degenerates. I don't doubt that, sure. But I think the overwhelming amount of people that even choose to go to college in the first place aren't going to go to college just so that they could waste some time on taxpayers' money. Honestly, I don't think that's the average person. I think that's like a far outlier. Maybe I have more faith in humanity. I don't know, but and
Yeah.
I would really like to see some like anything that shows that like once you make college more accessible, that like people just go to college to like waste time or like not get degrees, right? Like
Well, yeah. I mean, again, that's a disagreement among like what you believe human nature is. I've just seen it firsthand where people abuse when you have handouts like that, people will abuse it, and to what extent they abuse it, and to what extent
well,
it's used
is
properly
has this
is
problem been demonstrated anywhere else that they've like made college education more widely available?
I'm sure it's everywhere, frankly, in Europe. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but here's, I mean,
I mean,
another.
you're appealing to common sense. I mean, like it could be true. That's the thing, right? Like I'd like to see some data to convince me, but
I
that's
mean,
just
are people ever going to actually admit to that outside of like if you're drinking at the pub with somebody, they'll tell you it, but are they going to actually admit in some like formal survey, yeah, yeah, I'm just here to fuck off, like I don't think people are actually going to
well,
admit
no,
that.
no, it doesn't have that doesn't have to be the question. The question could be like, so you could do like a case study where like if a nation did free tuition, like access to college for everybody, um, you could look at that country and see whether or not there was any sort of correlation between like the amount of people that went to college and also the amount of people that went to college and ended up not getting a degree, right?
Yeah,
So you could look
although
at like those sorts of numbers and then like draw conclusions from that.
you could, but I would suggest that just because somebody's getting a degree doesn't mean that they weren't there, for improper motives and just there to fuck off and actually not even needed for the economy
Well,
to have them
exactly.
there.
So so even if we made college more widely available, even if they go to college and they only take like maybe they only take like a psych 101 or like a philosophy 101, or maybe they go to college and like they go for like music for like a year or whatever, and then they decide it's not for them. At least they come out like a little bit more educated, right? And maybe like a little bit more qualified for some jobs in certain areas, right? So like it's not like it's a total loss.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. It's just there's a lot I disagree with about that. Number one, one thing you said that I think is what like an assumption that you're operating on, which I think might be wrong, is that you said we need to make college more widely available, and I think that shows a misunderstanding because college is already available to everybody in the
Well,
United
no,
States.
that's not true because there's a huge portion of people that are well, frankly, just can't afford it without putting themselves into like huge debt, right?
Exactly, but they
Debt
can
that they
go if
really
they
can't
want.
afford to
They
go
can.
into.
The Fed loans are guaranteed. That's one of the main problems why
Well, that's
tuition
like
is so
telling
high.
somebody, well, you can be rich if you want to, right? Like you can just choose, like if you just make the right actions, you can do it, right? But like you're expecting somebody to be like the extreme exception to the rule, and I really don't think it's reasonable to expect anybody to be the exception to the rule, right? I want to make the rule easier and more accessible to like more people, right?
I'm not trying to I don't under I'm not trying to say anybody's an exception to the rule. I'm just telling you, if you're in the United States and you want to go to college, you can go. It is 100% available to you because the federal government is guaranteeing you access to student loans and aid, frankly. And if you make very little money, the federal government we already provide massive Pell Grants and everything else like that. So this notion that somehow college isn't already widely available is wrong. It is widely available. Anybody can go. And so I don't
It's
that doesn't mean anybody's an
it's
exception to
really
the
not
rule.
though. Like if you're especially if you have like family or like anything like that, it's definitely off the table if you're making under a certain salary, right? Yeah, you can get loans
You
and
can get
fucking put
loans.
yourself into debt,
Yeah, you can get loans
but
to even pay for
that might
living.
not be sustainable for everybody, right? Not everybody can afford to like
Oh,
take
well,
loans.
that's
That's a
exactly
very privileged thing to be able to do.
no, that's exactly right. It's a bad idea to take out a bunch of loans, especially to go get a degree like anthropology or something else. So I
Exactly. So
agree,
what
it's a
you're
bad
saying is
idea.
that you can go. It might be a decision. It might be a bad decision to go to college, but you can go, right?
So
That's the
it's
thing is I
available.
don't
It's
want
already
going.
widely
I
available.
don't want college to be a bad option for somebody just because they're scared of putting themselves into debt for life.
Well,
That shouldn't be a thing.
that ship has already sailed. Like college is a bad option
Why?
for a lot of people.
It doesn't have to be though. We can absolutely subsidize it for
We
the
don't.
average
Okay,
taxpayer.
here's all right. So I've offered, I guess, like maybe two or three reasons why I'm opposed to it. Number one, we don't have the money, we're broke. Number two, it's not in the
But
Constitution.
you
It's
haven't
it.
substantiated that claim at all,
Hold
that
on,
we're
but I
broke and
was
we
gonna.
can't afford it.
Well, we talked about it. We addressed the issue. I
We
said
did a
that.
talk about it.
I said that
Yeah.
number one, we can't afford it. Number two, it's not a constitutional thing. Number three, there will be massive amounts of fraud and
Wait, what's
abuse.
unconstitutional
Number
about it?
There's nothing in the Constitution that authorizes the federal government to be involved in college education.
Nothing authorized the government in the Constitution to do Social Security, and we still do Social Security.
No, the Social Security is authorized by the Interstate Commerce Clause.
Okay.
Like the interstate commerce, we have a government of enumerated powers, and if there's not something in the Constitution that authorizes the government to do it, then that's why it's called a limited government. But anyways, then the fourth reason was
wait. So what? Wait. So what in the Constitution prevents the federal government from being able to do that then?
because how the Constitution is set up is that basically it grants powers to the federal government, and all the other powers are reserved either to the states or to the people. And so in the U.S. Constitution, it specifically says the federal government is allowed to coin money. It's allowed to have a post office. It's allowed to have the Army and the Navy, and make bankruptcy laws, and like specific enumerated powers that the federal government's supposed to be doing. There's nothing in the Constitution that says the government is to provide free college education to everybody in the U.S.
You think that's like that needs to be a clause in the Constitution for the government to be able to actually like subsidize people's access to college?
Well, frankly, as the law stands, they could get away with it, and the Supreme Court uphold it under the Interstate Commerce Clause. But
right,
that gets into a
because there is already precedent.
Issue.
There's already legal precedent to do so.
No, I agree, and but I'm just saying these are my viewpoints.
You're just saying that you disagree with the legal precedent, then?
Yes, I am. I disagree with the U.S. Supreme Court precedent on the Interstate Commerce Clause.
I mean, that's fair to say. I mean, I disagree, but
yeah, that's fine. And so, but I was just saying, like, so those are like my 3 points that I've made already. My fourth and final point would be that it's not even a net good to be just sending people to college, because these colleges are just they're like indoctrination camps where the academy is completely biased one way. They're just totally like indoctrinating young people into just radical leftist thinking. Meanwhile, our economy doesn't even need a bunch of people like that. We need programmers and engineers and a lot of these skills that you can, teach yourself and not even go to college. And so you're going to college to be taught by some professor who's never had a real job in the economy about some radical leftist nonsense. And so that would be like my fourth, probably, and final reason that I'm opposed to it.
So you don't want to wait, so you don't want to publicly fund education because you don't want people going to college and getting liberal arts degrees?
I don't think I don't think the taxpayer, I don't think I want to be paying taxes so some kid can go and get a liberal arts degree and just be taught a bunch of leftist nonsense. I don't want my tax dollars going to that.
Well, that's not really how, like, you don't really get to choose that as a taxpayer, do you? Like you don't get to choose what somebody spends their food stamps on, right? Like
the whole point of politics is dividing up money. And so I'm engaged in a conversation about politics and trying to impact the policy in this country and discussing the issues and trying to sway the debate so people can actually think about these things and learn about these things. And I think a lot of people, when presented in that way, would agree with me and would say, you know what? Yeah, I work hard all day for my money. I do work hard for my money. I don't want my tax dollars to go pay for some kid to go party at college for 3 years and not give a fuck about it and be taught a bunch of leftist nonsense. It's not even good for the economy. And I think
where are you getting this idea that this
argument
happens, though? This is like a narrative that you've built up in your head. And I don't see this being like realistic. I don't see this actually happening anytime that like any country's made college more accessible.
Again, the human nature aspect of it, I think, is provable.
Well,
and
no,
granted,
you're playing off of intuition then.
No, I've had personal experience with it.
Okay, well then anecdotal, intuition, like these are all like really bad forms of evidence, right? I mean, if you're trying to persuade somebody, like definitely use different types of argumentation than like, arguing from
I've had like 4 or 5
personal experience.
arguments. I've listed like 4 or 5 arguments. And
No,
I
you
frankly,
haven't though, because you
the
haven't been able to substantiate any of them. I try to ask you to elaborate on any of them, and you haven't really been able to give me a solid answer on like why any of the points that you brought up were valid.
well, I disagree. I think I have.
I mean, you said that you disagreed with the legal precedents, and it's a valid opinion to have. But I mean, I mean,
I said like four.
I don't
I said
know.
4 or 5 reasons. Number one, we're broke. We don't have it. Number two, it would be massive fraud
You
and
weren't able to
abuse.
substantiate that
Number
claim though
three,
either, that
it
we can't
goes against
afford
the
it.
Constitution. Number four, it's not good for the economy, and this is BS. Number five, it's just fundamentally not fair to take money from somebody and give it to somebody else to go to college. It's just not fair.
What's
So
not fair about that?
because somebody is out there working hard day in and day out to make money, and you're going to come in as a government, take money from that person and go give it to some kid to go party at college.
We
That's
already do
not
that
fair.
every day. We already do that all the time with taxpayer money. That's literally the
I
purpose of
agree.
taxes.
I agree that a lot of our taxpayer dollars are being wasted and used in like unjust ways. 100% agree with that.
I
And
don't
we
think
need,
it's
that's why
unjust.
we need massive changes.
Well, I mean, I understand that you fundamentally disagree with like wealth redistribution, right?
Right, I do. Yes.
Well, so you disagree with taxes in general and you think that they're theft, right?
No, I don't. Taxes
No?
are perfectly constitutional.
Well, just because they're constitutional doesn't mean it's not theft, but I mean, but yeah, I mean, sure. So you're appealing to like the constitutionality, I guess, right?
I think the Constitution is a really important thing. Yes.
I think it is too, but I don't think it's like religious dogma. I don't think it's like a fucking like scripture like that needs to be like,
I know.
you know,
I know.
worship.
That's like. I mean, and I
Well, the
happen to
beauty of
disagree
the
with
beauty
that.
of the Constitution is that like it's a changing living document, right? Like if we
No,
think
it's
that
not.
anything in it is, it absolutely is.
It's not.
What do you mean it's not?
Like
The Constitution used to say that black people were 3/5 person, and now they're able to vote because we were able to like change the Constitution.
Oh, so you're talking about the amendment process, so that you can amend it and it can be living and
Yes,
breathing.
absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I agree. Of course amendments happen, but what legal scholars mean when they say it's a living, breathing document is that the words actually don't change. You actually don't have an amendment, but our interpretation of those words changes over time, and that's not true. But I mean, I've studied the Constitution a lot. I've studied political history a lot. I've studied the form of governments a lot. I actually would make changes to our Constitution. I do believe that we should have some amendments to the Constitution. But in general, the structure it's set up, I think, is very sound. And so, the fact that while the fact that the Constitution says the federal government can tax is an important issue to me. I think that is important. I think even independent of that, if I was to come up with my own constitution, I would still say the government should have the power to tax. I mean, there is like you have to have the government has to be able to tax in order to build an army, build a navy, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
So
I think taxes should be used to benefit like the everyday citizen, right? I don't think that it should be like only for I don't know, like
no, I agree with that. That's why I think like the post office that benefits everybody, the U.S. military that benefits everybody. The bankruptcy laws that's a net benefit for everybody. What else? I mean, I think generally speaking, tax dollars should go to benefit everybody. That's the whole purpose of the federal government. And then state tax dollars should go to benefit the people in that state.
well, why is it such a like that's the thing is that I don't get why saying that education should be included in the scope of that is such like a radical idea.
Like I think if you want to do that, you should do it at the state level. Like don't do it at if you want to do it at the state level, or even the county level. If you want to do it at the county level, I'm even more okay with it. If you want to do it at the state government, fine. But the federal government it's not the appropriate place to do it.
Hmm. Why? Why do you see a difference between like allowing the federal government and the state government to do it?
Well, like one of the like foundational principles and underlying reasons of having a federal government where you have states and then you have the federal government is because a government that's closest to the people is more responsive to the people, and it's going to do a better
Hmm.
job of governing. So, like, I might have a lot of say in my city council. I might have a lot of say in my county elections. I might have a little bit less to say in state. When you get to the federal government, it's so far away. It's not going to be as responsive to the individual citizens' needs, and that's why structurally you want most of the power to be to the lower levels of government because you're going to end up getting better results because the people are closer to it. They're able to control it more. That's one of the reasons we have a federal system.
Hmm. So I'm not necessarily opposed to leaving it up to the states, but the problem is that like a lot of the times when we leave issues up to the states and we don't enact any sort of like any sort of like federal mandate or whatever, right? Often what happens is that like the states just don't end up doing anything. Like we could look at like marijuana legalization, for instance, right? They like it's taken so long to get all the states on board with marijuana legalization. I think we're at the point now where most people can agree that like marijuana legalization is not a negative. It's a net gain for the people that that you're
Dude,
legalizing it for,
yes,
right?
finally a topic that we can agree on. And
Mhm.
this totally goes to my point about the states' rights. You're absolutely right. Like there's no reason the federal government should be banning marijuana. Think about this, dude. Like the federal government has marijuana as a higher schedule than methamphetamine. Like that's how stupid and out of touch the federal government is. They actually have marijuana as like Schedule 1 and like meth is Schedule 2 or something like that. They actually list marijuana as more dangerous and with less medicinal uses than meth. And like that's the perfect example of the federal government just being completely incompetent, not knowing anything that's going on. And so I think the federal government should just get out of you know, banning the possession of drugs entirely, leave that to the state. Now, where the federal government does have a role is at the borders because we need the federal government to control our borders and
Right.
to help our borders because that's an international thing. And um,
Sure.
I actually do agree with you on legalizing marijuana because there's prohibition doesn't work. It's less dangerous than alcohol, and prohibition just flat out doesn't work. I do draw the line on like meth and heroin though. I think those drugs I
Mhm.
think change a person so much that it
Sure.
actually creates a danger to society because these people lose control of themselves because the drugs are so powerful. But with marijuana, alcohol, that doesn't
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah, that's a reasonable position to have. I would even go a step further and say that maybe having like safe injection zones for like people that use heroin, for instance, or any sort of like free-based drugs can help by like allowing people to have more or better access to like rehabilitation centers and stuff like that, more access to like help and outreach programs and stuff like that, right? Um, I think that's good. I think treating drug addiction as more of a like health problem and less of a like criminal action is really important as well. I don't think like criminalizing these drugs really does anything for the people that are being abused by these drugs or being harmed by these drugs, whether it be like the trafficking, selling, or consumption of, right?
Right.
Um, so I really don't like the idea of like locking up a user or even locking up a dealer. I think like these are problems with like these are like symptoms of a larger issue, and criminalizing like the drugs or the drug use doesn't really solve the problem.
No, I mean I totally agree with that. I mean I have a lot of problems with the drug war and how it's been used and long-term incarceration for nonviolent drug offenses I think is totally immoral. Um, and so I mean I agree on a lot of that stuff. Now, the what role do I think the government ought to have on some of these issues? I guess I'm not um, 100% clear. Or 100% sure. I mean I do think that the government needs to if somebody's on meth and they're going around robbing and stealing, I think that the government police need to arrest that person and potentially
Yeah,
throw
I
them in
think criminal
jail, et
actions
cetera, et
are.
cetera.
Yeah.
But with respect to actually, you know, treatment centers and free needles and this, that, and the other thing, I'm not so sure. I really think the drug problem, I do think it is a symptom of a bigger issue. The question becomes, what is that issue? And there's a lot of issues in our society,
Hmm.
not just drug addiction, but lots of other problems. And I think a lot of those issues go back to sort of the social fabric in the country falling apart due to the destruction of the family, people no longer interested in any religion or higher power. It's
I
all
would
about the
actually agree
self. Like,
that like the family structure thing is a really big problem. Like we see now more than ever where parents aren't able to spend nearly as much time with their kids as they really should be. Because either it's a single family or a single parent household, or it's a two-parent household, but like both parents are having to work and not really having time to like raise their kid or be involved in their upbringing and stuff like that. I think that really is a problem with our culture in the United States. Um, and I don't know what the prescription is to that problem, but I definitely think it's a multifaceted issue.
totally, totally.
But yeah, dude, I really enjoy this conversation, but I'm on hard mode now, killing these zombies, and I'm fucking getting my ass whooped not being in voice chat right
Oh, I'm
now.
sure. No, I know. We've actually been talking for like 45 minutes already, so it's been a good one.
No, it's been really really good. Honestly, if we want to talk another time about maybe like more about like this drug legalization or criminalization topic, like I think that's really interesting to like conversation to have, or anything else that you want to talk about. Like I'm always open, dude. So just reach out anytime you want to talk, dude.
Cool. Good chatting. See ya.
Yeah, definitely.